Stop. That's it. That's all I have to say. Stop.
I believe in high school you had a racial discrimination lawsuit and you received $50,000 from your school as a result of this. And you've recently claimed that racism isn't such a big deal.
But I absolutely cannot support any black person that helped Trump get to this spot again.
Erika Kirk is now publicly accusing Candace Owens of being racist, and that is a major twist, because for months, Candace has been the one coming after Erika, pushing an entire storyline through her Bride of Charlie series and portraying her as someone who manipulated her way into influence. But now, the narrative is starting to shift. It seems like Candace's own past comments and behavior are finally coming back around. From defending certain controversial political views to openly attacking movements tied to racial justice, Candace has built a reputation for saying things that many people believe go way too far. And now that Erika is directly calling her out, all of those old moments are suddenly being dragged back into the spotlight all at once. So before we even get into how Candace is responding, we first need to break down why this accusation is gaining traction in the first place.
See racism against white people, racism against black people, but it's not a systemic issue that's stopping Black America. That whole narrative that black people can't get ahead because of racism is complete and utter garbage.
Now, one of the biggest moments people keep bringing up is Candace's claim that racism is no longer a real issue in America. Back in March 2019, during her speech at CPAC, Candace argued that people were being misled into thinking they were still oppressed. She claimed that the constant messaging about racism was actually damaging confidence and keeping people mentally stuck. Her main point was that she had never been a slave, and because of that, racism wasn't something she felt should define her reality.
I do not believe that white privilege is based upon the color of your skin.
Now, on the surface, that argument might sound like she's pushing personal responsibility, but critics quickly pointed out a major contradiction, because years before that speech, Candace herself had been the target of intense racist harassment while she was in school. That situation reportedly ended in a legal settlement after she received threats and racial slurs from classmates. She has even spoken before about how deeply it affected her at the time, including the toll it took on her mental health.
Yeah, it's actually the reason I am conservative is because of this thing that happened to me in high school, which was a race incident that involved a kid that was my best friend, and he, I got a boyfriend, that's the truth, and stopped hanging out with all my friends, as high school girls do, totally innocent, normal situation. And one night, he obviously had too much to drink and got 3 people who I had never heard of or met to leave really horrific racist.
So when people hear her later suggest that racism is basically not a real barrier, it creates a disconnect. And that disconnect is exactly what Erika and others are pointing to now. The argument isn't just that Candace is controversial, it's that her own past experiences don't completely match the message she's been pushing publicly. Then there's what happened during her testimony before Congress in April 2019. She was invited to speak at a hearing focused on hate crimes and the rise of white nationalism. But instead of addressing those concerns head-on, she brushed off the entire premise of the hearing. She called it fear-mongering and implied the issue was being grown out of proportion for political reasons. And that didn't sit right with a lot of people, especially since the data at the time showed white supremacist groups were linked to a major share of extremist-related violence in the United States.
Black in America my whole life, all 30 years, and I can tell you that you guys have done the exact same thing every 4 years ahead of an election cycle, and it needs to stop.
Critics argued that downplaying an issue like that wasn't just controversial, it was dangerous because it redirected attention away from something that has very real, measurable consequences. And once again, this is one of those moments that people are now revisiting because of Erika's accusation. Because when you put statements like that next to everything else Candace has said over the years, it starts to look less like isolated opinions and more like a pattern that people are questioning way more seriously now. And that takes us to 2020, during the worldwide protests after the death of George Floyd. This is where Candace's position became even more polarizing. She made comments about George Floyd himself, choosing to focus heavily on his past instead of the circumstances surrounding his death.
I was discussing George Floyd's record, his own lifestyle of terrorizing the Black community.
For a lot of people, that approach came off as dismissive of the bigger issue the protests were trying to address, because the conversation at the time wasn't just about one person. It was about broader patterns, statistics, and lived experiences across entire communities. Another moment that still follows her is the White Lives Matter controversy in 2022. Candace attended a fashion show alongside Kanye West wearing a shirt with that phrase printed across it, and the backlash was immediate.
If it weren't for Candace Owens, I would almost think he was going for irony. But her looking at him like that and their arms being interlocked, it's too...
Organizations like the Anti-Defamation League have identified that phrase as something that started as a direct response to the Black Lives Matter movement, and it has also been linked to extremist messaging over the years. Supporters tried to argue that it was simply meant to challenge narratives they disagreed with, but critics saw it as a deliberate provocation that ignored the historical context behind why those movements even existed in the first place. And this is where things get even more complicated, because whether Candace meant it as a statement or a stunt, actions like that don't exist in isolation. They add to a larger public perception, and that perception is exactly what Erika is now using to support her accusations. Then there's the more recent controversy that arguably had the biggest impact on Candace's career. In 2024, she parted ways with the Daily Wire after a series of statements that were widely criticized as anti-Semitic. She promoted conspiracy-style narratives about control over media and institutions, engaged with content tied to harmful historical myths, and made remarks that many people felt minimized the seriousness of the Holocaust. And at that point, even people who had previously supported her started stepping back. The backlash wasn't just online outrage either. She lost professional backing, faced platform restrictions, and was reportedly even denied entry to certain countries. So when Erika calls her out now, it's not happening in a vacuum. It's happening at a time when Candace's credibility has already been questioned on multiple fronts. Now, while Erika has been calling Candace racist, Candace has spent months building a case against Erika herself. Through her Bride of Charlie series, Candace has accused Erika of misrepresenting major parts of her life story. She claims Erika exaggerated her upbringing to gain sympathy, pointing to information suggesting her father was present and involved, despite the narrative that she was raised by a single mother. She's also questioned Erika's dating history, bringing up past appearances on reality shows and previous relationships that seem to contradict Erika's public statements. And it doesn't stop there, because Candace has also highlighted alleged inconsistencies in Erika's personal details, including contradictions in official records, which she argues suggest a pattern of manipulation. Now, some of Candace's claims go further into conspiracy territory, including talk about psychological experiments and hidden agendas. And while not all of those claims have been verified, they've still gained traction online, especially among people who were already skeptical of Erika from the start. Instead of everyone only questioning Erika, people are now also asking whether Candace has been operating from a place of bias this entire time. And that becomes a much further position to defend when there are years of public statements that can be pulled up, replayed, and interpreted in multiple ways. At the same time, Candace still has a large amount of material that she believes undermines Erika's credibility. This isn't a one-sided situation. It's two competing narratives, both fueled by allegations, both backed by loyal audiences, and both now playing out in real time. So where does that leave things right now? Erika is pushing the argument that Candace's past statements expose something deeper about her worldview, while Candace is still insisting that Erika's story falls apart the moment it's put under real scrutiny. Neither side is backing down, and the more this continues publicly, the more attention it's pulling. Because at the center of this isn't just personal drama, it's a bigger question about credibility, influence, and how narratives get shaped online. Right now, both women are fighting to control the story, but the final outcome depends on what the public chooses to believe as more details keep coming out. And at this point, it's clear this situation is far from over.